My name is Lorraine May Carter. I'm 66 years old and I still fold my sheets the way Mama taught me. Corners tight, no wrinkles, no excuses. Some mornings I wake up before the sun, pour myself a half cup of black coffee, and sit by the window with my knees pulled up like I'm waiting for something or someone. There's a letter in my dresser drawer. Not hidden, not displayed, just resting beneath a pile of old sweaters that don't fit right anymore. The edges are soft now, like time sanded them down. Ink faded in places, but I don't need to read it to remember what it says. I've got it memorized. Every word, every lie dressed up like comfort. Baby, I'll be back in a week. You be good, all right? Keep the house clean. Don't open the door after dark. There's milk in the icebox and bread in the tin. I'll be back before you know it. I promise. I was 10 years old. She didn't even pack a bag. Just put on her nicest dress. Blue with little white buttons. The one she wore to funerals and job interviews. Sprayed on her cheap gardenia perfume and kissed my forehead too fast. I remember the way her hands shook when she passed me the letter. Not like fear, like guilt, like maybe she already knew she wouldn't be coming back. She didn't say where she was going, said something about a friend down in Mobile, and just needing a few days to sort things out. I nodded. I always nodded. Mama didn't like questions. I watched her walk down the gravel driveway, heels sinking in the dirt, purse tucked close like it was something sacred. She didn't look back, not once. Just turned the corner and vanished. I stood in the doorway long after she was gone, blinking into the heat haze, like maybe the mirage of her would drift back up the road. But it didn't. That first night I set the table for two, me and Mama. I poured a glass of water for her and placed it across from mine. I warmed up the last of the beans and cornbread, ate slowly, tried to keep her seat warm with silence. I didn't touch the pie in the fridge. That was hers. I told myself she'd be home in the morning, that maybe she got held up or the car broke down or the bus ran late, that she'd come back with stories and smiles and that look she used to get when the weight of the world lifted off her for just a second. But morning came, and she didn't. Neither did the next, or the one after that. By the end of the week, I'd read the letter 12 times, folded it, unfolded it, tucked it in my pillowcase like a prayer. I started doing everything extra careful, sweeping twice a day, folding laundry she never wore, turning off lights before sunset. I wanted her to see the house just the way she left it, perfect, quiet, still, because if I kept everything the same, maybe time would fold in on itself. Maybe she'd walk back through that door and say, "Good girl, you waited, you listened." But she didn't. A neighbor came by, Mrs. Albright, from 3 houses down. She asked where Mama was. I said, "She'll be back soon." I smiled like I believed it. She brought over a casserole and a raised eyebrow. I told her I was fine. She didn't believe that either, but she left it alone. The second week, I stopped setting 2 plates. The third, the milk went sour in the icebox, and by the end of the month, the peaches on the tree out back had ripened and rotted without her. By the second month, folks started noticing. First, it was the mailman, Mr. Houston, who stopped by one afternoon with a package addressed to Ms. Carter, my mama. He asked if she was home, and I told him, without blinking, "She's resting." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me too long. I closed the door gently and locked it twice. Then came Miss Claudia from the church choir. She knocked on a Sunday morning holding a bag of bruised apples and a Bible so worn the leather curled. I didn't open the door, just stood behind it, listening. She stayed a while, murmuring something about God's timing and checking in. I held my breath the whole time. When I finally looked through the window, she was gone, but the bag was still there on the step. I didn't like people asking questions, because if I didn't answer, then nothing had to be real. I kept the lights off in the evenings, made sure the curtains stayed drawn. I washed Mama's clothes every Sunday and hung them out to dry, like maybe someone would see and think, "She's still here," but she wasn't. And the food ran low. The groceries she left barely lasted a week, and I was too proud to ask for help. I lived off peanut butter and saltines for a while, drank tap water, warm because I didn't trust the fridge after the milk turned. I got dizzy a lot, but I told myself it was just the heat. When school started, I didn't go. I told myself I'd go tomorrow, then the next day, then next week. But I didn't want to be the girl who had to explain why her mama hadn't picked her up, or why the emergency contacts never answered, or why she still wore the same shoes from last year even though her toes were curling under. So I stayed home. I kept a little notebook under my mattress where I wrote down things I wanted to tell Mama when she came back. Things like, the dog from across the street had puppies. I learned how to make eggs without burning them. I fixed the loose stair with nails from the shed. I wanted her to be proud. I wanted her to know I was trying. But some nights, I started to wonder if she ever meant to come back at all. That thought made me sick. Literally, I threw up the first time it crossed my mind, like my body rejected it before my brain could accept it. Because if she didn't plan on coming back, if she left me on purpose, then everything I believed about her, about love, about family, it meant nothing. So I clung to the only thing I had left. The letter. I read it again, over and over. Every time I started to slip into doubt, I'd unfold those creased pages and whisper her words back to myself like a chant. "Just 1 week, baby. I'll be back before you know it, I promise." But weeks became months. Months became a year. And the letter started to feel less like a promise and more like a curse. I was 11 when the knock finally came. Not Mama's knock, not the soft rhythm I'd replayed in my head like a lullaby. No, this one was different, louder, firmer, like it didn't ask permission. I was sitting on the kitchen floor with a jar of expired jelly and a spoon, trying to ignore the smell of something rotting in the trash. The knock came again. 3 sharp raps. I didn't move. Thought if I stayed real still, maybe whoever it was would just go away. But they didn't. They came around the back, boots crunching gravel, and when I peeked through the curtain, I saw a woman in slacks and a man with a clipboard. Strangers, government types. The woman had a badge around her neck and hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She tapped on the back door this time, gently, not like the front. "Lorraine? Honey, you in there?" I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The house was the only place I had, the only world I knew. "We just want to talk, baby. Open the door." They didn't leave until they got inside. Turns out it was Miss Claudia who finally called them, the church woman with a soft voice and heavy apples. She'd been checking on me from a distance, and after a full year of seeing laundry with no one wearing it, hearing the same dog bark but no girl's voice, and watching the lights stay off for weeks at a time, she put the pieces together. The woman's name was Carla, Department of Family Services. She didn't yell, she didn't scold. She sat on the floor beside me like we were equals, even though I hadn't brushed my hair in days and probably smelled like mildew and peanut butter. She asked me simple things. "When's the last time you saw your mom? Do you have food? Have you been to school? Are you safe?" And I answered best I could. "A year ago. Sometimes. No, I don't know." I remember the moment she looked around and exhaled through her nose, like she was trying not to cry or scream or both. She didn't say it, but I could feel it in the air, that mix of pity and quiet fury, not at me, at the world that let a child vanish without anyone really looking. They took me that night, didn't let me pack anything but what fit in a pillowcase, some clothes, the letter, and my notebook. The dog across the street howled as we pulled away. It was the first time I'd left the house in nearly 11 months. I thought maybe they'd take me to Mama. That maybe this was all part of the plan. Some big, messy misunderstanding, and we were finally going to be put back together. But instead, they took me somewhere colder, somewhere louder, a place called Maple Haven, Receiving Home. It wasn't a haven, not really, just a squat, gray building on the edge of town where forgotten kids waited to be sorted like lost mail. Cots in rows, lights that buzzed, showers with no curtains, a place that smelled like bleach and boiled hot dogs. I met girls there who had scars in places they wouldn't talk about, boys who didn't speak at all, kids who had already learned how to fight for blankets and lie for safety. And me? I just waited, like always, waited for Mama to come bursting through those doors, out of breath, weeping, saying how sorry she was, that she got stuck, that she was sick, that she tried, that she thought about me every single day. I told Carla that too, that Mama was coming for me. She didn't say yes, didn't say no. She just looked down at her clipboard and said, "Sometimes people don't come back, Lorraine, even when they mean to." That was the first time it hit me. That 1 week could stretch into forever. They moved me 6 times in 2 years. 6 different houses, 6 different families, 6 different versions of, "You can call me Mom if you want." I never did. The first one was a couple who only took girls because their real daughter had died. They dressed me up like her, right down to the pink barrettes and frilly socks. They called me Maggie by mistake twice. I never corrected them. The second was worse. A woman named Doris, whose husband worked nights and drank too much when he didn't. She'd line up the dishes on the counter every morning and count them when she got home. God help you if one was chipped or wet or in the wrong spot. I still flinch when I hear the clink of ceramic. The third family had too many kids and not enough food. I slept in a basement with a girl named Tasha, who cried in her sleep and chewed the ends of her braids. She told me once she'd seen her mother shot right in front of her, then asked me why I never cried. I didn't have an answer. You learn fast in the system. The quiet ones last longer. If you don't ask, they don't yell. If you don't hope, they can't disappoint you. So I stopped expecting anything. By the time I was 13, I had what the caseworkers called emotional detachment. I called it not dying inside every time someone left. I still had the letter though, carried it everywhere, folded it into a rectangle so tight you'd think it was hiding gold. I read it less now, not because I didn't want to, but because each time I did, it hurt more. It stopped being a comfort. It started feeling like a trick. I kept a list in the back of my school notebook, a column titled Things Mama Missed, my first period, my first black eye, the time I got an A in science and no one clapped, the night I almost ran away but didn't know where to go, the time a foster brother touched me while I pretended to be asleep. She missed all of it. And still, I waited. Every birthday, I imagined her knocking at the door with a cake she'd baked herself. Vanilla with lemon frosting, my favorite. I pictured her holding it with trembling hands saying, "I'm sorry, baby. I didn't know how long it had been. I thought of you every day." But by 16, I didn't picture it anymore. Because by 16, I understood something no child should have to understand. Sometimes people don't come back because they never planned to, or worse, because they did, and then decided not to. There's a kind of grief that doesn't come with a funeral. No flowers, no final goodbye, just an absence so loud it becomes part of who you are. That's what Mama became. An outline, a silence, a name no one dared mention because every time they did, my hands shook and my teeth clenched. I stopped calling her Mama in my head, started calling her the woman who left. It made things easier until I got placed with the Merriweathers. They had a real house with porches and picture frames and a golden retriever named Baxter. They went to church, baked on Sundays, and said things like grace before dinner and we're just so blessed. It felt like I'd stepped into a Hallmark card. I didn't trust it, but they didn't push. They gave me space. Let me pick out my own sheets, purple, with tiny moons on them. Bought me new shoes without asking my size, like I was a problem to be solved. They let me breathe. I remember Mrs. Merriweather, Clara, sitting on the edge of my bed one night after a bad dream. She didn't ask what it was about, just rubbed my back slow and quiet and said, "You don't have to tell me what happened. but you don't have to carry it alone either." I didn't answer, but I didn't push her away either. It was the closest I'd come to feeling safe in years, so of course it didn't last. Nothing good ever did. I was 17 when it happened. That last year at the Merriweather's house, it started out quiet, calm. I was finally doing okay in school, had my own dresser, a part-time job at the library shelving returned books. I even started drawing again, just little sketches in the corners of my notebooks. Birds, hands, shoes, mostly things that stayed still. Clara taught me how to make lemon squares. She said I had gentle hands, like someone who'd learned not to rush. I started to believe just a little that maybe this was it. Maybe the storm had passed. Maybe I could stop running in my sleep. And then one night, Clara's husband, Tom, asked if I could help him clean out the garage. It was hot that day, humid in that way that makes your skin stick to everything. Clara had gone to visit her sister in Tallahassee for the weekend. Just me and Tom. I didn't think anything of it. Not then. The garage was cluttered, half tools, half memories. He pulled down a box of old Christmas lights, and I climbed the ladder to pass them to him. The radio played something soft in the background, a song I didn't know. I was halfway down when it happened, just a hand. Too low, too still. I froze. He said it was an accident, laughed even, like I was silly for reacting. Said, "Don't go thinking things that ain't true now. You girls get dramatic." But it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't innocent. I knew that touch. I'd felt it before, years ago, in a different room with a different name. It lives in your bones, that kind of wrong. I stayed quiet, said nothing, finished cleaning the garage, and went to bed like nothing happened. Because what was I supposed to say? He was the husband of the only person who'd ever made me feel safe. And I was just a girl with a case file. The next morning, I packed a bag and told Clara I got a job offer out of town. Lied through my teeth with a smile so tight it could have cracked. She hugged me like she meant it, pressed a $20 bill into my hand and said, "You've got a place here, always. Don't forget that." I never told her, not then, because I didn't want to ruin her picture of her life, because I didn't want to see that look in her eyes, the one that says, "I chose the wrong man, and now it's too late to undo it." So I left. Again, moved into a transitional housing program for older foster youth, aging out of the system. Concrete walls, flickering lights, counselors who rotated so often you never learned their names. They gave me a cot, a key, and a pamphlet titled "How to Start Over." I didn't read it. Starting over wasn't new to me. It was the only thing I'd ever done. But I'll tell you the truth. That was the year the waiting stopped. Not because I stopped missing Mama, but because something cracked wide open inside me. I didn't feel grief anymore. I felt fury. Fury that she left me alone in a world that didn't care. That she handed me a note and vanished into it. That she never came to court, never answered the letters Clara helped me send to her last known address. That she missed every version of me I ever became. I started going by Rain instead of Lorraine. Said it was easier. But the truth was, I didn't want to share a name with her anymore, not even a piece. People always talk about closure like it's a door you get to shut once you understand something. But some doors don't close. Some stay cracked open forever, with wind whistling through, carrying the smell of what could have been. That's what Mama was to me by then. A breeze, a memory, a bruise no one saw. I was 23 the first time I ever saw her face again. It wasn't in person, it was a photograph. A grainy, water-stained thing printed on the back page of a local newspaper someone had left behind at the laundromat. I wasn't even looking for it. I was just folding sheets the way she taught me when I caught a headline that stopped my hands mid-air. Mobile woman arrested in cult raid. There were 3 pictures, 2 men, 1 woman. Her eyes were heavier, hair darker than I remembered, but the shape of her jaw, that stubborn line of her mouth, it was her. My mother, Lorraine Sr. My stomach dropped clean out of me. She looked nothing like the memory I kept, the one in the blue dress with gardenia perfume. This woman had sunken cheeks and a dead stare, like someone who hadn't felt sunlight on her skin in a decade. I sat on the cracked plastic bench with that paper in my lap, shaking like I used to when I was 10 and the power went out. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been an hour, could have been a minute. Time stopped making sense. The article said she'd been living with a fringe religious sect, the Children of the Cleansing Flame, holed up in some compound in rural Alabama. There were weapons, drugs, talk of purification rituals. The word brainwashing was used more than once. And children, there were children. My hands went numb. All those years I thought she was dead or trapped or trying. Turns out she'd just found a new family, and I wasn't part of it. She'd left me behind and chosen them, not in a moment of desperation or madness, but over and over, every single day for 23 years. She'd been caught smuggling contraband through mail drops. One of the kids, a girl not much older than I'd been when she left, escaped and tipped off the FBI. The whole thing came crashing down, and just like that, she was found. But not for me. Not because she came looking, not because she remembered, because someone else pulled her into the light, kicking and screaming. I don't remember walking home that night, but I do remember sitting on the edge of my bed, the letter in one hand, the paper in the other. The photo stared back at me, that face so familiar it hurt, like a splinter working its way to the surface. She was alive. She had always been alive. I'd imagined 1,000 scenarios, kidnappings, car accidents, memory loss, even witness protection, anything that made her a victim. But this was a choice. She chose them, chose delusion, chose destruction over me. I burned the article, watched it curl into nothing in the bathroom sink, ashes floating like snow in a storm. But I didn't burn the letter. I couldn't, because even though I knew every word was a lie, it was still the last thing she gave me. A paper ghost I'd carried through every foster home, every scar, every whispered night. I slept with it under my pillow that night, like I had when I was a child. But I didn't cry. I didn't have any tears left for her, only questions, only fury, only silence. And maybe, deep in some rusted corner of my soul, a hope I still hated myself for. Because when someone you love betrays you like that, it doesn't disappear. It calcifies. It digs in. It becomes the shape of you. And I still didn't know what that meant for me. They asked me if I wanted to testify. A woman from the U.S. Attorney's Office called me one Tuesday morning, voice clipped and clinical, like this was just another line item on a to-do list. "We have reason to believe you're the biological daughter of Lorraine Carter," she said. "Not even my daughter, just a daughter, like I was an old receipt someone finally fished out of a drawer." She said my mother, the defendant, she called her, was being charged with multiple counts of child endangerment, fraud, and unlawful imprisonment. They had witnesses, evidence, recordings, but what they really wanted was the narrative, something the jury could feel. I hung up without answering. Then I threw up in the sink. Because it wasn't that I didn't want to testify. It was that I didn't know what I would say. What do you tell a room full of strangers about the woman who made you and then disappeared into madness? Do you talk about the cornbread you burned trying to keep the house warm? Do you explain the bruises that weren't hers but came because she wasn't there? Do you tell them you stopped being a child the day she left and never really started again? I sat with that question for weeks. The call came again and again. Always polite, always insistent. I finally agreed, not for her, not for justice, but for the girl I used to be, the one who whispered through cracked lips, "Just one more week, Mama, please." So I went. The courthouse smelled like lemon cleaner and exhaustion, the kind of place that pretends to be tidy but never feels clean. They sat me outside the courtroom in a hallway with plastic chairs and a ticking clock. And then the door opened. And she was there, not the woman from the newspaper, not the one I remembered from childhood. This was someone else entirely. Gaunt, pale, eyes vacant, like the soul behind them had gone somewhere else to hide. Her hair was thinner, her hands were cuffed. She didn't see me at first, but when she did, her lips parted just a little, and I thought maybe she'd speak. But she didn't. She blinked once and looked away, like I was just another face in the gallery. Not her blood, not her girl, just another story. I took the stand. They asked me about the letter, the house, the nights alone, the years in foster care, the homes, the hands, the hurt. They asked me if I knew where she had gone. I said no, I didn't even know she'd gone anywhere real. I thought she was dead. They asked me how it affected me. I said, How long do you have?" A few jurors cried. One had to step out. I don't think it was what they were expecting, because I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I just told them what it meant to be erased, what it meant to wait, what it meant to carry hope like an infection. And when they asked me one final question, would you want to see her again? I didn't answer right away, because the truth was ugly. It sat in my chest like a stone. Finally, I said, only if she had to look me in the eyes. The trial lasted 2 more weeks. She was sentenced to 15 years. People told me it was justice. But I didn't feel anything, no relief, no vindication, no peace, because prison is still a place, with food and a bed and someone who checks on you. Me, I had none of that. She left me in a kind of prison no bars could hold, and no sentence would ever balance that ledger. But I walked out of that courthouse lighter, not healed, not whole, but no longer carrying her weight like it was mine to bear. I went home, made a cup of coffee, opened the drawer, took out the letter, and for the first time in 23 years, I almost threw it away. Almost. But I didn't. I sat there at the kitchen table, fingers curled around that letter like it might turn to dust if I let go, or maybe like it might turn into her if I held it just long enough. The paper had gone thin, the way old things do, like it was trying to disappear itself, inch by inch. The creases had become scars, deep and permanent. I'd read it so many times I didn't even need to unfold it anymore. I knew it by heart, every comma, every lie. I'll be back before you know it, I promise. The word promise used to feel like a lullaby. Now it felt like a trapdoor. I laid it flat on the table and stared, not for answers. I stopped expecting those a long time ago, but to face it, face her, the only way I ever really could. And then I wrote something new. On the back of her letter, in the same careful handwriting I used to practice in the margins of school books I never kept, I wrote, "You didn't come back. I did. You disappeared. I survived. You lied. I lived." I folded it once, clean and sharp, and placed it back beneath the sweaters, not out of sentiment, not anymore, but as a record, a receipt, proof that I was here and I remembered everything. Because forgetting would have meant she won, and I did not survive all that to let her story erase mine.